Okay, let's get to it. What's up, you guys? Today I'm going to be making a video about the co-op program at Northeastern. So for those of you that don't know me, I'm Tiffany. I'm a third year at Northeastern studying accounting and management information systems. I've completed 2 co-ops and I'll be graduating next May in 2021. So I kind of just wanted to talk about this because I feel like it's really confusing if you don't go to Northeastern, and there aren't really a lot of good resources online that really explain the co-op program from a student's perspective. So I thought I'd make a video about my experience. So before I jump into it, I just want to say that this is my experience with co-op. A lot of the colleges within Northeastern do the co-op program a little bit differently, but the business school I think is the most strict about it. So I'm kind of going to be talking about my experience with the co-op program, and it's constantly changing and getting better. So I can only say what I've done and how it's been for me. Overall, I've definitely loved it. I know this is going to be a super long video, so in the description box below, I'm going to try to put timestamps with descriptions for the different topics I'm going to be talking about, so you can jump around if you just want to learn about certain things. I have my computer here for notes too, because I wrote a bunch of stuff down. So let's get into it. The first thing I'm gonna wanna talk about is what co-op is and what are the different co-op cycles. Co-op is kind of like an extended internship. It lasts 6 months and you're working full-time instead of going to classes, and this is integrated within the Northeastern curriculum. I would say that it's definitely more of a real-life experience than an internship, because a lot of interns don't have the time to acclimate to the work that the firm is doing. So they do a lot of really small, minimal tasks that don't really have an impact on your team or the firm you're working with. But for co-op, I would definitely say it's different. You're working as if you're a first year at that firm, and that you're fully integrated on the team doing tasks that people normally would be doing if you weren't there. So I would just say it's a much more intense version of an internship. Some of the craziest co-ops I've definitely heard about getting, yeah, these are pretty insane that you can have these opportunities through Northeastern. Okay, so I've heard people work for NASA, I've heard Amazon, Apple, a lot of people go after Spotify, they have a huge position there. A lot of people go out to Silicon Valley. The big 4, the big 3 consulting firms come. Lots of shoe brands, so like Nike, Puma, Bose, like headphones, Samsung. Big banks, so like Bank of America, Merrill Lynch, Morgan Stanley, Goldman Sachs is a huge one. A bunch of other companies too come to Northeastern to hire co-ops, not just these big ones. So you definitely have the opportunity to do startups or research, medical labs, lots of hospitals in the Boston area especially. But yeah, definitely lots of opportunities to branch out and learn a lot more about these different companies, not just the big ones, the small ones as well, which is pretty awesome opportunity. So as for the co-op cycles, the way that Northeastern does this, during your freshman year, you pick what co-op cycle you want to be on. So you can pick spring or fall and you get assigned one of those terms. If you're on spring co-op, you take a full year of classes your freshman year. Your sophomore year, spring, you go on co-op. Your junior year, spring, you go on co-op, and then you'll graduate with a full year of classes in your 4th year if you're doing a 4-year program. Northeastern's also special in that you can do a 5-year program with 3 co-ops. And so the way that would work is that your sophomore spring, junior spring, and 4th year spring is on co-op, and your 5th year, both semesters are classes. The opposite is what happens on your fall cycle. So instead of going on co-op in the spring, you go on co-op in the fall. You would go on co-op your junior fall, senior fall, and then your 5th year fall, and your 5th year spring semester, you would be taking classes and graduating if it's a 5-year program with 3 co-ops. If you're doing 4 years with 2 co-ops and you're on the fall cycle, you're gonna do your co-ops fall junior year and fall senior year, and then graduate that senior spring off of classes. So you have to take classes your last semester at Northeastern. That was kind of confusing. So hopefully I'm gonna edit in some pictures or diagrams so that you understand the way that spring co-op cycle works versus fall co-op cycle. But hopefully that's helpful in letting you know what kind of track you want to take with your co-ops. The semester before you go on co-op, you have to apply to co-op. And during this time, you're taking a co-op class in addition to your regular course load. And this is led by a co-op advisor who you pick, and they're specific to different majors. Since I'm an accounting and MIS major, I got to pick an accounting co-op advisor and take a class with that person who led me throughout the application process and what to do during that time. So that class kind of instructs you on how to build a resume. You get your resume proofread by a ton of different people. You do mock interviews, you have someone coaching you new. Your co-op advisor meets with you every week or so during that time so that you get to talk to them about how the application process is going and that you're not going through it alone. They can help you and understand how to navigate through all of this, considering it's all very new. And they play a huge role in your other co-ops later as well, but that's just the starting point where they teach the co-op class and get you to apply to co-op and lead you through that process. The next topic I'm going to talk about is co-op a requirement? It definitely depends what school you're in. I know for the business school, you're required to do at least 2 co-ops in order to graduate. You have the option to do 3, and that's where people do their 5th year of education at Northeastern, which is completely normal. I know that at other universities, people don't do that, and that's considered like kind of weird, but at Northeastern, it's pretty common. I want to say I know like 50% of people who are going to graduate in 4 and 50% wanting to graduate in 5 years. So you make that choice pretty late. I honestly still have the time to do another co-op if I want to. During the fall of your 4th year, you pick when your graduation date is going to be, so you have a lot of time to decide if you want to do 4 or 5 years. It is crazy to think that after 4 years of college, you can graduate with a full bachelor's degree and an entire year of work experience. And a lot of people opt to do the 5 years because you get a year and a half of work experience and you graduate with a bachelor's degree. That's the draw for the 5-year program. And it is a really good opportunity to push the 5 years if you have the time and have multiple interests you want to pursue through 3 different co-ops. That was off topic. Anyway, is co-op required? For business students, it is required to do 2 co-ops. You can do 3. For other students, I'm not sure about the requirements for specific colleges within Northeastern, but I want to say 97% of kids at Northeastern go on co-op. Because it is the biggest draw at the school, a lot of people want to take advantage of it because there's so many good reasons that you should do it, which I'll get into later. But international students are definitely allowed to do co-op. Some firms won't hire international students because there's problems with visas, I'm pretty sure, but there are definitely opportunities, and I've never heard of anyone being restricted from co-op because they were an international student coming to the US at Northeastern. So the next topic, how to find a co-op. You have to apply for co-op. The semester that you're being guided by your co-op advisor while you're applying for co-ops, they give you an approval to the database, which is called NU Careers. And basically it's just a long list of all the different jobs, the descriptions, where they are, and on this webpage that only Northeastern students have access to. So during that semester of applications, depending on the timeline of your co-ops, meaning when you'll be interviewing for them and everything, you look through the database pretty regularly and you determine what kind of job you're looking for. So even though I'm an accounting student, they let me apply to any job I want to. So say I really wanted to work in something with art design and that was an option in the NU Careers database, I could apply just because they want to give people the opportunity to apply to any job that might interest them. So there's a long list, and you can filter by job title, where it is. So co-op can be international. I know people who go to like Taipei, Tokyo, Cape Town in South Africa, Berlin, Paris, London. You can really go anywhere in the world. You can just look at the database and filter by what different city or country, or if you have a certain major or keyword, you can type it in and it'll query that so you can find a job description with that in it. And then once you pick a job, you can click on the link, you have a job description, you can read it, and all you have to do is press apply, attach your resume, and in some cases attach a cover letter. And that's it. So you just press apply and that's it, and just sit back and wait. I hope I'm explaining this so well. A lot of people wonder how many co-ops you do apply to. It's technically up to you. There's no minimum, there's no maximum. It's definitely within your comfort level. So I know people who apply to maybe 50 different co-ops, and then I know people who apply to like 7. So it really depends on how comfortable you are. So for a lot of different companies, they will find multiple co-ops. So they might have a co-op program where they take 20 different co-ops in all different types of marketing and advertising. And there might be some companies that hire only one co-op because they only have the capacity for one on the trading floor. So it can be very competitive depending on what you're striving for and what kind of experience you want. You can also build your own co-op. I don't know too much about this, but if there is an opportunity you know about, or you network your way into a firm that you want to work at and co-op for, you can talk to them about it, and then you have to go through your co-op advisor in a different application process just to get it registered with Northeastern and to get it approved. I don't know as much about that, but it's definitely a possibility. Some people do it for startup companies or for something that they have in mind if it's very niche and they have some type of connection to a firm. So next, the timeline of co-op. So this can get a little fuzzy. You have to keep in mind that while you're applying for co-op, you're also taking classes as a full-time student. So it's a lot to juggle at one time because you're working on, I don't know, maybe 16 credits of classes. You also have to interview for co-op after you've applied through the database, and that might require visiting the actual office or taking time out of your classes to go talk to your employer. The timeline can be very different. You typically don't know when you're gonna hear back because you technically just have to find a co-op before the end of the semester, I guess I would say. Just before the start date of co-op, which is typically the first Monday in January after New Year's if you're on spring cycle, and fall cycle is usually the first week of July. But basically you'll be hearing back from employers on a rolling basis. So depending on what kind of field you're going into, a lot of the companies line up their timeline with other firms in that field. For example, the Big Four accounting firms come to recruit at Northeastern, and their timeline is usually at the end of September, beginning of October is when they all do interviews during the same week. So for something like that, those are all really big accounting companies that are looking for specific people during a busy season. They tend to do their interviews at the same time because they're going after the same type of student. There are some management consulting firms that also come to recruit at Northeastern, and they're also a really early timeline. There are some investment banking firms that come. They're also really early in September. Some start before classes even start, which is really hard to get on the timeline if you aren't aware of it. You kind of need to learn by word of mouth or your co-op advisor by keeping in constant communication with them and by acknowledging and telling them what your goals are for that co-op cycle. Yeah, I'm telling you this stuff from the spring cycle perspective. When you apply in the fall to go on co-op in the spring, just because that's the perspective I've always had because I'm on spring cycle. So you'll hear back from different employers at different times, but that's kind of when you have to be smart about what you want. So you'll be hearing back from these employers after you apply to see if you got an interview. And so you might have a phone call screening one week, but at the same time you have a video conference and you have an in-person interview for all 3 different firms the same week. But you have to figure out when you have free time to schedule those calls or those interviews, when you'll also have time to do your classwork, when you'll also have time to actually go to your classes, because some interviews require you to skip classes. So if that's the case, you have to communicate with your professor about what's happening in your schedule. There's just a lot to coordinate, and you have to kind of understand how you want to build your schedule out and fit all of these things in to have the most opportunity for success in all those different aspects. That's not meant to scare anyone. It's just that there is a lot going on, so you have to be mindful of what you're doing during that time. Also, so as I mentioned, the different industries, you have to be careful. If, for example, I wanted to do management consulting, but I was also interested in audit at a Big Four firm, then I would have to be careful because those timelines might not necessarily overlap. If I get an interview and then an offer from a management consulting firm, before I even start the interview process for an audit position, I have to decide whether or not I want to take that co-op or just decline it and keep going through the application process looking for something else. So a lot of the co-op firms don't overlap with their goals and their timelines for giving offers for co-op, so you do have to be careful in deciding whether or not to pass up an opportunity to pursue something else you might have a good feeling about, or to take something because it's safe but not necessarily 100% what you wanted in a job. That is something definitely to be mindful of, but it comes with just your comfort level and the experience of going through it. I can't really explain that process as well because it's very situational and depends on how you're feeling, what kind of firms you're going after, as well as what the job scene is like at that time. So interviewing for co-op. So as I mentioned, this is through Northeastern. So you can interview on campus if the firm sends an employer to come to campus, but if it's not on campus, it might require you to go somewhere. For example, if your co-op you're looking for is in Boston, which is where Northeastern is, you might have to go downtown to the physical office in order to interview with them. So you might have to, do your class at 11, and once you get out at something like 12:30, you have to hop on the T and go downtown to meet your employer for an interview at 1. Or you might have to do a video interview over Zoom or Skype for Business, something like that, which you could probably take in your dorm room or your apartment. You also may have to skip class to go to interviews. So a lot of professors are really nice and lenient about letting you leave class if you have to go to an interview, because they understand that the co-op program is so integrated and really important for students in getting some type of work experience, and they're not going to let one class session prevent you from going after a job that could make your career better. You also might have multiple rounds of interviews, because if the position is very competitive and there's only a couple spots, they really want to narrow down their candidates. So you might do one round against 50 people and then another against 20 and then the last one against 5, just so they can narrow down and learn more about you. And that could also be like the first one's a phone screening, and the second one's, you know, a video conference, and the third one is an actual in-person interview where you go to the office. Definitely depends. Every company kind of runs the interview process differently. Okay, accepting co-op. So you accept co-op by signing an official letter of... You sign an official offer letter, and then you confirm with your co-op advisor that that's where you're going, that's what you're doing. I know some people negotiate pay or different start or end dates. I even know some people on spring cycle who are supposed to be working for 6 months from January till the end of June, but they extend it all the way through the end of August. So they have 8 months worth of experience. They can get more money and just understand more about the qualifications in that field. That's also something your co-op employer might be able to help you with, depending on where you work. Next, I guess I should talk about pay. How much are you paid? This is a tough subject, because for many different majors and different schools within Northeastern, the wages can be very different. Some co-ops I know are not paid at all, which can be really tough seeing other people make a lot of money, but their experience is definitely going to be different, and it might be a field where the firm doesn't have the capacity to pay co-op for what they're doing. I've seen this for something like working for the government. Some people get paid a stipend, so this means you get paid X amount of money for your entire co-op period, or you get paid, you know, like X amount of money every month throughout your co-op. It's not going to change no matter how many hours you work. Usually I've seen that happen with research. I know that there's a requirement for business majors to be paid a minimum amount of money. It might be minimum wage in Massachusetts, and I honestly don't know any business students that don't get paid. Some people get paid overtime. So for example, my first co-op was an audit. I worked at a firm that required me to work 70 hours a week, which seems like a lot. I will definitely say it was exhausting. That co-op happened to only be 4 months long. A lot of accounting co-ops are only 4 months long, and in this case, that's what this was. And I got paid overtime. I got paid time and a half for every hour over 40 hours a week I worked. So for something like 70 hours a week, I got 40 hours of regular pay and 30 hours of time and a half. I've never seen anyone really decline overtime, because a lot of people want the money, the experience, and really it does give you the experience of working somewhere full time. So I would just say pursue every opportunity you can in that field, because working overtime will definitely get you further. It'll make you look a lot more driven and hardworking, and you're showing you're putting in the time and effort along with the rest of your team. I can tell you that on my first co-op, I got paid about $27 an hour. On my second co-op, I got paid like $31 and some change for every hour, which was pretty crazy. So I could say a lot of business kids get paid 18 plus. I know some people, the most I think I've heard a business student get paid is maybe 35 or 40. I know some comp sci students get paid a ridiculous amount of money. The most I've heard is like $50 an hour, which is literally insane. And some of them give you the opportunity to work from home or be really flexible about your work schedule as long as you get your work done. So it is kind of crazy to think that when you're 19, 20 years old, you could be making that much money. It is pretty cool. It's a really good opportunity to get a leg up financially and just get some financial independence. Okay. Moving on to the next section, co-op and working on the job. How seriously do employers take co-op and the type of work that you do? I would say they take it really seriously. Employers, a lot of them are looking for a long-term investment. They're just not looking at you to work there for 6 months. They could potentially want you to work there full-time post-grad or work another co-op for them. They definitely want to see how much you can do. You're not doing a lot of intern tasks. You're definitely working as a full-time employee. A lot of companies continuously come back for co-ops every cycle, because instead of hiring someone who's a full-time employee, it's cheaper for them to just keep rotating co-ops. You can get experience, and the firm can just pay them less money to do jobs that a full-time employee could do. You have to show up to work every day. Some people get time off or vacation time or sick days. It depends, but they take it very seriously, in the fact that I know me and all my friends were just as integrated with the team as any other employee, and not just as an intern. We were treated like fully embraced as a full-time worker there, which was really nice because it makes you feel like you're actually an adult. Some companies, like I mentioned, have a ton of co-ops. I know some firms have like 50 co-ops during one cycle, which is crazy, but a lot of them put on events where you get to meet each other and mingle and hang out and network, which is really good for just building your network and meeting different people who have similar interests as you. And I know other firms that only hire one co-op per cycle because it's really competitive or they don't have the capacity for more, and they might have events where you learn more about different people in the company and get to network with other people who are working in different fields that you don't normally get to interact with. It's really fun and all, but it is a full-time job for 6 months, so you feel like you're actually immersed in the real world. Like I said, some employers require you to work 9 to 5, some you can negotiate your hours and work like 7 to 3 if you want to. Others require you to work overtime. Like I said, some people work 70 hours a week. Some require you to only work the 40 and don't want you to work anymore. And then I know people who travel on co-op. It's a little bit crazy, but some people have the opportunity to do that depending on your co-op and what the firm has to offer for you. You can do so many different things and people just have crazy experiences. Like, let me just say that. Okay, the next thing I want to talk about is future opportunities from co-op. So a lot of people wonder if they can get a full-time job from co-op or if this is kind of just an experience you have and you just add to your resume. I would say it's a little bit of both. Depends what your employer wants. As I said earlier, some employers are looking to just hire you full-time. They know what they want and they see the co-op as a 6-month test trial, but I've definitely seen a lot of people, especially with business co-ops, work a 6-month co-op and get a full-time offer. And then when you graduate from university, you have a full-time job and don't need to go on search your senior year, which is also crazy to think about because it is really hard to find a full-time job and to find a co-op. Those firms are specifically feeding at Northeastern. So it's a really good program, and the fact that you could graduate with a full-time job where some other students at universities have a hard time looking for something to commit to. Other firms don't offer a full-time job. They really just need to rotate people in and out, and they just want to give the experience, or they don't have the capacity to hire every co-op full-time. But that's also good in the fact that you get 6 months of experience and you can move on to try something else if you have an interest in different career paths. This is a good one. Okay, life on co-op. It's interesting. You are like a full-time worker, literally working like a full-time employee post-grad, but then coming home to probably living either on campus or with other Northeastern co-ops. It is crazy to combine those two worlds, and co-op does that, and it's kind of insane when you're on the job because it's like you're living a college life, but at the same time you have a full-time job. So it's like a really weird in-between stage of being in the real world and still being in college, which is so crazy to think about because the work definitely impacts your social life and your everyday life because you're working something like a 9 to 5 and your friends might not be on the same co-op cycle as you. So if you're on fall cycle and your friends are all on spring cycle, you might be going to your job 9 to 5, but they'll be going to classes, but you can't be there with your friends because you're working. That definitely takes a toll on some people. Luckily, all of my friends are on spring cycle with me, or most of them at least, so it's not too difficult for me, but I know some people who have to deal with that transition, and it can definitely be tough because then your sophomore, junior, and possibly your senior year, you don't get to see your friends that much, especially if they co-op in a different city. That can be especially straining on different relationships you have. The last thing I want to talk about is the positive and negative aspects of co-op. I know I talked about a lot of things in this video, so you could probably find all the drawbacks and the positives to this just by watching the entire thing, but I'm going to try to separate it and make it more defined so you understand what it's like to go through this. Let's start with the negative aspects of co-op. So it sounds really great and everything, but like I said, these firms are only coming to Northeastern to find co-ops, so this program can be very, very competitive. Depending on what kind of field you see yourself going into and what type of firms are coming to Northeastern, you might be facing a ton of competition applying for different types of co-ops, especially if they only have one position they want to hire. Considering you're probably going to be friends with a lot of people in your major, you have to keep in mind that you might be competing with these same people for a job that you want. And a lot of people handle it very differently. I mean, me and my friends are really good about the fact that while we're applying for co-op, it is super stressful. So we tend to not talk about it until we've committed. If one of my friends commits, then she'll tell me like about the entire experience and how she was feeling throughout it. And then like when I commit, I'll tell her all about it. But it definitely depends how you approach it because it can be a very touchy subject. If you have high hopes or you think you really want something and then you don't get it, or if you and your friend are both going for the same job and one of you beats out the other one, like it's super competitive in that nature. nature. The other thing I want to talk about is it makes you think about the future. I know I'm saying this under the negative aspects of co-op, but I'm including it here because if you don't know what you kind of want coming into this school, you kind of have to figure it out really fast because the school is really heavily focused on this program. A lot of students don't come in undecided is what I've noticed because they have a set idea of what career path they kind of want to go into or what major they want to explore, and it makes co-op for them a lot easier because then they can determine what kind of jobs they want to go after. If you don't have a good idea of what you're interested in, this is a great way to figure it out, but it does force you to figure that out really fast, or it could stress you out a lot if you're under this type of pressure. Another drawback of co-op is that there may not be a position that you want, and that happens occasionally. I have one friend who he specifically wants to go into sustainable investing for finance, and because that is such a niche field, Northeastern doesn't really offer that type of job position, and so that could be really hard if you want to pursue something niche or you know what you want but you can't necessarily find it. You kind of have to work through other means to get experience that could be applicable to that niche program you're looking for. The last negative aspect I really want to talk about is housing. If you choose to go on co-op and it's not in Boston, you have to find your own housing. Northeastern has some buildings in different cities. I know they have New York, Chicago, maybe San Francisco and LA, but they don't really offer housing options in a lot of different cities unless you're in Boston where you can live on campus. So that is something you have to figure out on your own. You can check out my other video, which I will link down below, for my move-in process going to New York for co-op. But I did have to find that apartment on my own. So you definitely have to be cautious because once you commit to a co-op, you have to find housing and everything on your own and potentially roommates if you're living in an expensive city. So that's just something to be mindful of. Those are the main negative aspects I'm gonna focus on. The positive aspects, if you couldn't already see, you graduate with so much real world job experience. It is crazy to think like how much more of a competitive edge you have over some other students at different universities, even if they've done internships. Those last maybe 10 weeks, but this one will last you 6 months and you'll be doing multiple. You will learn a ton of skills and just have a good time. You'll learn so much more about yourself too. Like I realized that it's not just a job that's gonna make me happy, it's a company culture, and you have to figure that out through interviews and through other processes as well. So co-op definitely made me realize that. Another positive aspect is the pay. If you are paid, it's insane to think that you'll actually have money while you're in college. Being able to work and support yourself for that semester as well as coming semesters is really important just to understand the financial aspect of it and to be independent. You can understand what life is like post-grad. It's a really good transition into what the real world is like while you're still in college and can flip-flop back to classes next semester. It just gives you a taste of what kind of the rest of your life is going to be like, and I don't think any other experience reflects that as much as co-op does. Lastly, you can explore different cities and get opportunities you wouldn't have access to otherwise. So some people really get to travel a ton. You definitely have the opportunity to go to different cities and they were looking to hire someone just like you. You get to see firms that are actually coming to Northeastern versus going to Glassdoor or Monster to look for students all over the country or all over the world. So the competitive pool is a lot smaller. So those are just a couple of the positive and negative aspects, but I think that wraps up this video. So I know this video was super long. If you watched, okay. I can't even say words anymore. So if you watched up until this point, thank you so much. I hope this was super insightful for you. If you have any other questions about Northeastern or co-op in general, you can leave a comment down below and I will try to answer all of them. I'm really happy that I get to just share all this information with you guys and help in any way I possibly can. So let me know what kind of resource I can be to you and what upcoming videos you want to see from me. Thank you so much for watching. Give this a big thumbs up and subscribe down below if you haven't already. Thanks again, and I'll see you guys soon. Bye.